Admiral Zyx'Thrax of the Galactic Hegemony surveyed the small blue-green world through the viewscreen of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, and felt the distinct sensation of all six of his hearts swelling with anticipation. His exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's ambient lighting as he puffed himself up to address his bridge crew. "Behold," he announced, gesturing dramatically with his primary appendages, "the legendary planet Earth, allegedly home to the mythical humans." He performed the Carthulan gesture for sarcastic air quotes, which involved wiggling his sensory tendrils in a way that made the junior officers uncomfortable. "Prepare the invasion fleet," he continued. "According to our intelligence, this world is ripe for conquest. Abundant resources, pleasant atmosphere, and populated only by unintelligent fauna and these so-called humans that science clearly tells us cannot possibly exist." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vril, approached cautiously. "Sir, with all due respect, what about the transmissions we've been receiving? The mathematical sequences, the music, the strange shows about baking competitions, and medical professionals engaging in inappropriate relationships?" Admiral Zyx'Thrax waved a dismissive appendage. "Obviously automated defense systems, or more likely, the desperate attempts of some primitive silicon-based life form trying to appear more threatening than it is. The concept of humans is scientifically absurd." He activated the ship-wide communication system. "Attention all invasion personnel. We have arrived at the target world designated Earth. Prepare for standard conquest protocol. Remember, this is a Class C operation. We anticipate minimal resistance, as the dominant species is clearly mythological." "But sir," Vril persisted, "what about the extensive historical records? The philosophical texts? The bizarre entertainment involving animated sponges living underwater?" "Preposterous fabrications," the Admiral snapped. "Think about it logically, Vril. Our best xenobiologists confirm that carbon-based life forms could never evolve to be bipedal with only 4 limbs. It's biomechanically inefficient. And their supposed civilization, building technology with only 2 manipulator appendages? Laughable. Plus they allegedly breathe oxygen, a corrosive gas. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds?" He straightened his ceremonial plating and continued his rant. "No. What we have here is a planet of simple animals, and perhaps some rudimentary silicon intelligence that has created this elaborate hoax to deter invasion. Probably inspired by the ancient Zorg-Mathian fairy tales about humans that have spread across the galaxy." Vril seemed unconvinced. "But what if they're real? What if they resist?" The Admiral produced the hegemony equivalent of a laugh, a high-pitched whistling through his spiracles that caused several navigation officers to flinch. "Oh, please. Our intelligence indicates that even if these humans did exist, which they don't, they spend most of their time arguing over the color of garments worn by their entertainment figures, or debating the optimal temperature for their bean-based beverages. They are at best primitive semi-sentients." He turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the landing sequence. Standard grid pattern. And remember, no unnecessary force against the local wildlife. We're conquerors, not monsters." As the invasion fleet deployed from the inevitable conquest, no one noticed the small blinking light on the communication console indicating an incoming transmission. No one, that is, except for Ensign Klupik, who was too intimidated by the Admiral's confidence to mention it. Chapter 1. First Contact. Meanwhile, on the surface of that small blue-green world, Technical Sergeant Devin Miller of the United Earth Defense Force was having a spectacularly bad day. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, staring at the massive alien fleet appearing on his radar screen. He was the sole operator on duty at Remote Monitoring Station 42, located in what humans still called Wyoming, despite the area having been administratively reorganized decades ago. It was supposed to be a quiet posting. A career dead end, his commanding officer had called it. "Nothing ever happens at Station 42, they'd said. Perfect for someone with your service record." Devin took a swig from his water bottle and tried not to panic. He'd been assigned here precisely because he wasn't considered reliable in high-stress situations. And now, apparently, he was humanity's first line of defense against what looked like the biggest alien armada in recorded history. "Of course this happens during my shift," he grumbled, frantically typing commands to verify the readings. "Couldn't have happened during Winter's shift. Oh no, had to be mine." The system confirmed his worst fears. This was no malfunction. The fleet was real, it was massive, and it was deploying what looked like landing craft. Devin hit the big red button. Yes, humanity still used big red buttons for emergencies. Some traditions were worth preserving. And activated the global alert system. "This is Technical Sergeant Miller at RMS 42, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We have a Code Omega situation. I repeat, Code Omega." Multiple unidentified vessels in Earth orbit, deploying what appear to be landing craft. This is not a drill. There was a moment of silence before the response came. RMS-42, this is UEDF command. Verify code Omega with authentication sequence. Devon swore under his breath. Of course they'd want verification. He'd want verification too if some nobody at a backwater monitoring station claimed an alien invasion was underway. Authentication Bravo Tango 97 Delta Foxtrot, he replied, reciting the code that he'd memorized but never expected to use. Another pause. Authentication confirmed. Planetary defense protocols initiated. Stand by for orders, RMS-42. Devon exhaled. At least they believed him. That was something. The screen in front of him showed the alien landing craft forming a perfect grid pattern as they descended toward Earth's surface. It was almost beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way. Tactical analysis suggests systematic landing approach, he reported. Multiple entry vectors consistent with a full-scale invasion strategy. Understood, RMS-42. Defense forces are mobilizing worldwide. Maintain observation and continue reporting. Devon nodded, though no one could see him. Copy that. He pulled up the planetary defense status display. Around the world, missile silos were opening, energy shields were powering up, and combat units were scrambling. The sleeping giant that was Earth's military machine was waking up. Sorry, E.T., Devon muttered to himself as he watched the alien ships continue their descent. But you picked the wrong planet to invade today. Back on the inevitable conquest, Admiral Zyx'Thrax was growing impatient. Why haven't the landing parties reported in yet? He demanded, pacing the bridge in a way that made his exoskeleton click rhythmically against the polished floor. Subcommander Vril consulted his datapad. They should have established communication by now, sir. It's possible there's atmospheric interference. Nonsense, the Admiral scoffed. Our communication systems are designed to function in environments far more hostile than this. Something else must be happening. At that moment, Ensign Klupik finally gathered enough courage to speak up. Sir, we've been receiving a transmission for the past 27 minutes. The Admiral turned all four of his eye stalks toward the young ensign. And you're just mentioning this now? You seemed busy, sir. Klupik replied, his color-changing skin betraying his anxiety with a sickly yellow hue. Put it through, the Admiral ordered, his voice dangerously calm. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a being that made several junior officers gasp. It had only two eyes, a bizarre flat face with a protruding nasal structure, and was covered in a uniform of some kind rather than a proper exoskeleton. This is General Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force, the being said. Unknown vessels, you have entered Earth space without authorization and deployed craft to our surface. This constitutes an act of war. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. There was a moment of stunned silence on the bridge. Then Admiral Zyx'Thrax began to laugh. Impressive holographic technology, he said, once his mirth had subsided. The detail is remarkable. You've clearly studied the mythological descriptions of humans quite thoroughly. The being on the screen frowned. This is not a joke or a deception, alien vessel. You are currently violating the sovereign territory of humanity. Your landing craft have already encountered our defensive systems. Check your fleet status. Almost reluctantly, the Admiral glanced at the tactical display. To his shock, nearly 30% of the landing craft were no longer transmitting. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. What have you done to my ships? That was a warning, the being replied coolly. The next salvo won't be. Withdraw your forces immediately. Admiral Zyx'Thrax straightened to his full impressive height. I don't know what manner of creature you actually are, hiding behind this human facade, but the Galactic Hegemony does not respond to threats. We are the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy. Your primitive defenses cannot hope to... He was interrupted by a series of urgent alerts from the tactical display. Another 40% of the landing craft had just gone silent. As I was saying, the being continued, withdraw immediately. This is your final warning. The Admiral felt his primary circulatory pump skip a beat. This was not proceeding according to plan. Cut transmission, he ordered. Once the screen went blank, he turned to his tactical officer. Analysis. What happened to our landing craft? The officer was frantically working his console. Sir, they appear to have been targeted by some form of directed energy weapons. Highly sophisticated. Nothing like what we expected from a Class C world. Impossible, the Admiral insisted, though with notably less conviction than before. There must be another explanation. Subcommander Vril approached cautiously. Sir, I think we must consider the possibility that, well, spit it out, Vril. That humans might actually exist, sir. And that they might be considerably more advanced than our intelligence suggested. The Admiral stared at his second-in-command for a long moment. That's absurd. The very notion defies all scientific understanding. With respect, sir, so does the loss of 70% of our landing force. Before the Admiral could respond, the tactical officer called out, "Sir, we're detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface." "Show me," the Admiral ordered. The view screen displayed hundreds of small objects rising from the planet, heading directly toward the invasion fleet. "Are those missiles?" Vril asked incredulously. "Primitive projectile weapons," the Admiral said dismissively. "Activate defensive screens." "Already done, sir, but these don't appear to be simple ballistic projectiles. They're changing course to track our ships." The Admiral watched in growing horror as the supposedly primitive weapons executed complex evasive maneuvers, bypassing defensive fire, and homed in on his vessels. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Technical Sergeant Devin Miller watched with a mixture of awe and terror as Earth's defensive systems engaged the alien fleet. The skies above were lighting up with energy discharges and explosions visible even from the ground. "RMS-42, this is Command. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the alien flagship. They may be preparing a major offensive. All personnel are ordered to secure positions." "Copy that," Devin replied. Then, almost to himself, "Wish I had a secure position to go to." Remote Monitoring Station 42 wasn't exactly built to withstand alien bombardment. It was essentially a reinforced bunker with some sophisticated electronics, designed to survive moderate natural disasters but not interplanetary warfare. Still, Devin had his orders. He locked down the station as best he could and continued monitoring the situation. The alien vessels were now in disarray, clearly taken by surprise by Earth's defenses. Human military strategy had evolved significantly since the early 21st century, shaped by decades of preparing for exactly this scenario. The old saying went, "Humans don't need to be the best at warfare. They just need to be unexpectedly good at it." Today, that philosophy was being put to the test. Devin's console chimed with an incoming message. It wasn't from Command. It was coming through on an emergency channel reserved for direct field communications. "This is Colonel Alexander Reeves, 5th Orbital Drop Battalion. Any UEDF personnel on this frequency, we need immediate intel. We've boarded one of the alien vessels, but we're encountering resistance." Devin blinked in surprise. They'd already managed to board an enemy ship? That was impressively aggressive, even by human military standards. "Colonel, this is Technical Sergeant Miller at RMS-42. I'm monitoring the battle from the ground. What kind of intel do you need?" "We need ship schematics, life support vulnerabilities, anything you can give us. These bastards were clearly planning to invade us, so they must have detailed information about their own weaknesses somewhere in their systems." Devin's fingers flew across his keyboard. "I'm running analysis on the sensor data we've collected. Stand by." He wasn't supposed to have access to the advanced analytical programs he was now utilizing, but Devin had always had a talent for creative computer use. It was part of why he'd been relegated to this remote posting in the first place. "Sending you what I've got, Colonel," he said after a few minutes. "Based on their energy emissions and hull composition, I've identified what appear to be vulnerable junction points in their power distribution system. Hit those, and you might be able to disable the ship without destroying it." "Copy that, Sergeant. This is exactly what we needed." "Reeves out." Devin leaned back in his chair, heart racing. He'd just directly contributed to a boarding action on an alien vessel. If they survived this, maybe his commanding officer would reconsider his not suitable for high-stress situations assessment. Assuming, of course, that Earth survived what was quickly becoming the most significant event in human history. Chapter 2, The Unthinkable. Admiral Zyx'Thrax was facing the unthinkable: defeat. Half of his fleet was either destroyed or disabled. Communication was sporadic at best. And now there were reports of the enemy, these impossible humans, actually boarding several vessels. How is this happening? He demanded of no one in particular. How could our intelligence have been so catastrophically wrong? Sub-Commander Vril, to his credit, was maintaining his composure better than his superior. "Sir, I recommend immediate withdrawal. We can regroup at the Kelverin Nebula and reassess." Retreat before these mythological creatures? The Admiral's pride was clearly battling with his survival instinct. "Sir," Vril said firmly, "these mythological creatures have destroyed half of our invasion force in less than one planetary rotation period. Whatever they are very real and very dangerous." A junior officer interrupted with yet more bad news. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the unyielding dominance. Last reports indicated hostile forces had reached the central command deck." "That's impossible!" the Admiral exclaimed. "The unyielding dominance is a dreadnought-class vessel with a crew of 12,000. "Nevertheless, sir, it appears to have been taken." The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching as more of his ships went dark or began transmitting distress signals. This was beyond humiliation. It was approaching extinction. "Sir," Vril pressed, Your orders? Finally, the Admiral's survival instinct won out over his pride. Order all vessels to disengage and retreat. Maximum speed. Regroup at fallback point Xandar 7. And the landing force is already deployed to the surface? The Admiral hesitated only briefly. They're on their own. We can't risk further losses by attempting extraction. Vril nodded grimly and began transmitting the retreat orders. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're receiving another transmission from the planet. Ignore it, the Admiral snapped. Focus on the retreat. They're overriding our system, sir. I can't block it. The view screen activated, showing the same being as before, the human general. Admiral, she said, we've captured several of your vessels intact, including their data cores. We now have complete access to the Galactic Hegemony's military codes, strategic plans, and star charts. The Admiral felt his exoskeleton grow cold. That's not possible. Additionally, the General continued, we've analyzed your propulsion technology. Quite impressive, though inefficient in several key areas. We're already implementing improvements to the captured vessels. What do you want? The Admiral asked, his voice barely a whisper. The unconditional surrender of your fleet, Admiral. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. And if I refuse? The General's expression remained impassive. We've already demonstrated our capabilities. Don't force us to destroy your remaining ships. The Admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were watching him, waiting for his decision. The mighty inevitable conquest, flagship of the hegemony, reduced to this. Very well, he said finally. We surrender. Chapter 3. Unexpected Mercy. 3 days later, Admiral Zyx'Thrax found himself in what the humans called a conference room, though to him it felt more like an interrogation chamber despite the comfortable accommodations. Across from him sat the human general he had spoken with during the battle, along with several other high-ranking military officials and what appeared to be civilian authorities. Let me make sure I understand correctly, said one of the humans, identified as the Secretary General of the United Nations. You invaded Earth because you didn't believe humans existed? The Admiral shifted uncomfortably. Our xenobiological models indicated that your form of life was theoretically impossible. Carbon-based bipeds with your specific characteristics have been considered a galactic myth for millennia. A myth? Another human asked incredulously. We've been broadcasting radio signals into space for over 2 centuries. Yes, well, the Admiral replied. Those were generally attributed to either automated systems or some form of silicon-based intelligence using fictional constructs as a psychological warfare tactic. The humans exchanged glances that even the Admiral, with his limited understanding of human facial expressions, could interpret as a mixture of amusement and disbelief. And now, the General asked, do you still believe we're mythological? The evidence has become difficult to refute, the Admiral admitted, though I must say, your existence challenges virtually everything we thought we understood about xenobiology. That sounds like a you problem, one of the military officers muttered, earning a stern glance from the General. The Secretary General leaned forward. Admiral, your failed invasion has placed us in an unprecedented situation. Until 3 days ago, humanity was unaware of the existence of the Galactic Hegemony or any other interstellar civilization. Now we find ourselves in possession of several of your vessels, your technology, and a great deal of your military intelligence. I am aware, the Admiral said grimly. The question now is, what happens next? The Admiral had been dreading this moment. In the hegemony, the penalty for such a catastrophic military failure would be immediate execution, if not something worse. He had no reason to believe these humans would be more merciful, especially after he had attempted to invade their world. I assume you'll want retribution, he said, straightening his posture. I am prepared to accept full responsibility for this action. My subordinates were following orders. To his surprise, the humans seemed taken aback by this statement. Admiral, the General said, we're not planning to execute you or your troops. You're not? No, that's not how we operate. What we want is dialogue, understanding, and assurances that the hegemony won't attempt another invasion. Now it was the Admiral's turn to be confused. You've captured our ships, our technology, our tactical data. You clearly possess military capabilities far beyond what we anticipated. Yet you're not demanding reparations or territory? Oh, we definitely want reparations, one of the civilian authorities clarified. And we'll be keeping some of your ships for study. But we're more interested in establishing diplomatic relations than pursuing further conflict. The Admiral's sensory tendrils twitched in disbelief. Diplomatic relations? With a species you didn't know existed until we tried to conquer you? Life is full of surprises, the General said with what the Admiral was learning to recognize as a smile. We humans are particularly adaptable. So it seems, the Admiral conceded. The Secretary General slid a data pad across the table. These are our proposed terms. We'll return most of your personnel and some of your vessels. In exchange, we want formal recognition from the hegemony, non-aggression guarantees, and technological exchange protocols. The Admiral scanned the document, his disbelief growing. These terms are remarkably lenient. We prefer to make friends rather than enemies when possible, the General explained. Though make no mistake, if the hegemony attempts hostile action against Earth again, our response will be considerably less restrained. The Admiral had no doubt about that. He had witnessed firsthand what humans were capable of when threatened. It was both terrifying and, he had to admit, impressive. I will convey these terms to the Hegemony Council, he said finally. Though I should warn you, they may not be as adaptable as your species seems to be. They'll adapt, the General said confidently. Or they'll learn the hard way, as you did, that humans are not only real, but exceptionally good at defending our home. The Admiral couldn't argue with that. In fact, he was beginning to think that the ancient Zorg-Mathian fairy tales about humans might have understated just how formidable these beings truly were. Chapter 4. The Hegemony Responds. Meanwhile, thousands of light-years away, the Hegemony Council was in an uproar. Complete disaster. Unprecedented humiliation. The entire invasion fleet, defeated by a myth. The 9 members of the Council, representing the founding species of the Galactic Hegemony, were not taking the news well. Supreme Councilor Quarthos, the eldest and most powerful among them, raised all 4 of his upper limbs for silence. The situation is indeed grave, he intoned once the chamber had quieted. But it also presents us with an opportunity. An opportunity, scoffed Councilor Mrek. Half our 3rd fleet is destroyed or captured. Our military codes are compromised, and a previously unknown species now has access to our advanced technology. What possible opportunity could arise from this catastrophe? Quarthos activated the central holographic display. It showed the blue-green world that had caused so much trouble. For millennia, we have dismissed the legends of humans as mere superstition, he said. Now we must face the reality not only of their existence, but of their formidable capabilities. Any species that can so thoroughly defeat a hegemony invasion force is one we should study carefully. You suggest we make peace with these creatures? Asked Councilor Jinva, her crystalline form shimmering with indignation. I suggest we be pragmatic, Quarthos replied. Admiral Zyx'Thrax reports that they are offering surprisingly reasonable terms. They seek diplomatic recognition, non-aggression pacts, and technological exchange. They defeated our fleet and now they want to trade with us? Councilor Mrek couldn't hide his disbelief. What kind of strategy is that? A human one, apparently, Quarthos said, and one we would be wise to consider carefully. If they wanted war, they could have destroyed the entire invasion force. Instead, they captured ships, gathered intelligence, and now offer negotiation. The council chamber fell silent as the members contemplated this. There is another factor to consider, Quarthos continued. Our long-range scans indicate that the humans have already begun adapting our technology to their own purposes. Their rate of technological assimilation is unprecedented. He adjusted the holographic display to show sensor readings from the hegemony monitoring stations nearest to Earth. The data showed energy signatures consistent with hegemony drive systems, but with modifications that actually improved efficiency by nearly 20%. They've already improved our propulsion technology? Councilor Jinva's crystalline structure paled, a sign of extreme shock in her species. Indeed, Quarthos confirmed, and that is merely one example. Given their demonstrated military prowess, and this apparent talent for technological adaptation, we must consider the possibility that if we choose conflict over diplomacy, we may not emerge victorious. The chamber erupted in murmurs again, but this time with a distinctly worried tone. What do you propose, Supreme Councilor? Asked Councilor Bracktool, who had remained silent until now. I propose we accept their terms, establish diplomatic relations, and learn everything we can about these humans. Knowledge is power, after all. And if these beings are to be our new neighbors in the galactic community, better they be friends than enemies. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The galactic hegemony would make peace with humanity. As the council session ended, Quarthos remained alone in the chamber, studying the holographic image of Earth. His species was known for their long-term strategic thinking. They routinely made plans spanning centuries. Fascinating creatures, he murmured to himself. Perhaps the old legends weren't so fanciful after all. Chapter 5. New Beginnings. 6 months after what was now being called the First Contact Incident, Technical Sergeant Devin Miller had not expected to become a hero. Yet here he was, receiving a commendation from the Secretary General herself, with the ceremony being broadcast globally. Technical Sergeant Miller's quick thinking and initiative under extreme pressure exemplify the best qualities of humanity, the Secretary General was saying. His actions directly contributed to our successful defense and helped shape the favorable outcome of humanity's first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Devon stood at attention, trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. Quite the opposite, in fact. His career had been a series of minor disciplinary issues and transfers to increasingly remote postings. After the ceremony, he found himself approached by a familiar face, Colonel Reeves, the officer he'd assisted during the boarding action. "Sergeant Miller," the colonel greeted him with a firm handshake. "Good to finally meet you in person." "Likewise, sir," Devon replied. "Though I have to say I didn't do anything special, just my job." The colonel laughed. "Your job was to monitor a radar screen in the middle of nowhere, not provide tactical support for a boarding action against an alien vessel. Give yourself some credit." Devon shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just seemed like the right thing to do at the time." "Well, that right thing saved lives and helped us capture intact alien technology that's already revolutionizing half a dozen scientific fields." The colonel lowered his voice. "Between you and me, I've been authorized to offer you a position on a new joint military scientific task force. We're going to be studying the alien tech, developing countermeasures, that sort of thing." Devon blinked in surprise. "Me, sir? I'm just a technical sergeant with a disciplinary record longer than my service record." "You're also the guy who hacked into classified analytical systems to help us take an alien ship," the colonel pointed out with a knowing look. "Those kinds of skills, and that kind of initiative, are exactly what we need." Devon considered this. A chance to work with alien technology, to be on the cutting edge of humanity's new place in the galaxy, instead of monitoring a radar screen in Wyoming? It wasn't even a question. "I'm in, sir." "Excellent. Report to Cheyenne Mountain Complex next Monday. Oh, and you might want to get used to your new rank, Lieutenant Miller." As the colonel walked away, Devon stood in stunned silence. A promotion, a new assignment, and the chance to be part of humanity's future among the stars. All because he happened to be the only one on duty when aliens decided to invade. Sometimes life really was strange. Chapter 6. The Diplomatic Mission. 6 months later, Admiral Zyx'Thrax found himself in yet another human conference room. This time, however, he was there as the official diplomatic representative of the Galactic Hegemony, rather than as a prisoner of war. Across from him sat a delegation of human diplomats, scientists, and military officers. Among them, he recognized General Vasquez, who had led Earth's defense during the invasion. Beside her was a human male in a military uniform who had been introduced as Lieutenant Miller, apparently some sort of technical specialist. "Admiral," the lead human diplomat began, "we appreciate your cooperation over these past months. The technological and cultural exchange has been proceeding smoothly, and our scientists have made remarkable progress in understanding your propulsion and communication systems." "Yes," the Admiral replied dryly, "I've noticed. Your adaptations to our technology have been impressive." He still couldn't quite believe how quickly these beings had not only understood, but improved upon hegemony technology that had taken centuries to develop. "We have a proposal for the next phase of our relationship," the diplomat continued. "We would like to send a delegation to the hegemony capital world, a diplomatic mission to establish more formal relations." The Admiral's sensory tendrils twitched involuntarily. "You want to send humans to Quarthos Prime, the heart of the hegemony?" "Precisely," the diplomat confirmed. "We believe face-to-face diplomacy will be more effective than continuing these discussions remotely, and our scientists are eager to learn more about your civilization firsthand." The Admiral considered this request. On one hand, the idea of humans walking freely on the hegemony's capital world would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. On the other hand, the Supreme Council had been very clear about their desire to establish peaceful relations with these unexpectedly formidable beings. "The Council will need to approve such a visit," he said finally. "But I will support your request. After all, if we are to coexist in this galaxy, we must learn to understand one another." "Excellent," the diplomat replied with a smile. "We've already begun preparations. Our delegation will include diplomats, scientists, cultural experts, and a small security detail. Standard protocol for diplomatic missions." The Admiral nodded, though he couldn't help but notice General Vasquez and Lieutenant Miller exchange a brief glance. There was something in that look that triggered his instincts for danger, honed by decades of military service. "May I ask," he said carefully, "who will be leading this delegation?" "Actually," General Vasquez spoke up, "I will be, along with a team of our most qualified personnel." including Lieutenant Miller here, whose technical expertise will be invaluable. Now the Admiral understood the look. The very humans who had been instrumental in defeating his invasion force would now be visiting the heart of the hegemony. It was either a remarkable coincidence or a deliberate message. Knowing humans as he was beginning to, he strongly suspected the latter. "I see," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "The Council will be interested to meet the architects of Earth's defense." "We look forward to it," General Vasquez replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "After all, we have so much to learn from each other." The Admiral had the distinct impression that the humans had already learned a great deal, perhaps too much, about the hegemony, while the hegemony was only beginning to understand humans. It was an uncomfortable imbalance, but one he could do little about. Chapter 7. Journey to the Stars. 3 months later, the human diplomatic vessel Unity departed Earth orbit with little fanfare but enormous significance. Constructed using a hybrid of human and adapted hegemony technology, it represented the first steps of humanity's advancement into interstellar capabilities. Lieutenant Devin Miller had never imagined he'd be packing for a trip to an alien capital world. His personal quarters at the Cheyenne Mountain Complex were modest but comfortable, a significant upgrade from Remote Monitoring Station 42. The last 9 months had been a whirlwind of debriefings, specialized training, and crash courses in xenobiology, alien cultural practices, and diplomatic protocols. General Vasquez had been clear about his dual role: official technical advisor and unofficial intelligence gatherer. The hegemony had agreed to technological exchange, but Earth suspected they weren't sharing everything. They needed to know what the aliens were holding back, especially regarding their military capabilities. After 7 transit jumps through the hegemony's remarkable FTL network, the Unity emerged into the Quarthos system. The sight that greeted them was breathtaking. A massive planet orbited by a partial Dyson ring that glittered with the lights of a civilization that had endured for millennia. "My God," breathed one of the officers. "It's enormous." "This is why we're here," General Vasquez reminded her crew quietly. "To understand what we're dealing with." Admiral Zyx'Thrax was waiting to greet them personally, a gesture that spoke to the importance the hegemony placed on this visit. The formal reception that followed was a carefully choreographed display of power and hospitality, designed to impress while subtly demonstrating the hegemony's vast reach and capabilities. During the reception, Devin found himself approached by Director Jinva of the Hegemony Science Directorate, a crystalline being whose species he didn't immediately recognize. "Lieutenant Miller," the director greeted him. "Your technical contributions during the unfortunate first contact incident have been noted with interest. Perhaps you would be interested in visiting our science directorate during your stay?" "I would be honored," Devin replied, noting the emphasis on what was likely carefully selected facilities. "Excellent. Your curiosity about our transit network technology, for instance, is quite understandable. The ability to travel such vast distances almost instantaneously does represent a significant advancement." It was a probing comment, designed to gauge his interests and potentially his knowledge. Devin chose his response carefully. "Indeed, Earth is still adapting to interstellar concepts. We have much to learn." "As do we all," the director replied with what might have been amusement. "Knowledge is always a two-way exchange." As the reception continued, Devin circulated through the crowd, engaging in similar conversations with various hegemony officials. Each interaction followed a familiar pattern: polite expressions of interest, carefully probing questions, and offers of limited information. It was classic diplomatic intelligence gathering, now playing out on an interstellar stage. By the time the reception concluded, Devin had collected gigabytes of sensor data and dozens of recorded conversations for later analysis. As the human delegation was escorted to their quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that beneath all the diplomatic niceties, something significant was happening within the hegemony. Chapter 8. Hidden Agendas. While the human delegation settled into their quarters, a very different meeting was taking place in a secure chamber deep within the Hegemony military complex. Admiral Zyx'Thrax, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony Defense Forces, faced a semicircle of high-ranking military officials from various member species. "The humans are now on Quarthos Prime," Admiral Zyx'Thrax stated, his tone neutral, but his body language revealing his discomfort. "Supreme Counselor Quarthos has welcomed them as potential allies." "Allies?" scoffed General Draz of the Murg Thal, his fur bristling with indignation. "These creatures defeated our Third Fleet. They should have been contained, not invited to our capital." "The defeat of the Third Fleet is precisely why caution is warranted," countered Admiral Zyx'Thrax. "Direct confrontation has proven problematic." Admiral Zyx'Thrax raised a limb for silence. We are not here to debate decisions already made by the Supreme Council. We are here to discuss the implementation of Operation Contingency. The chamber grew quieter, all attention focusing on the Supreme Commander. The presence of humans on Quarthos Prime represents both opportunity and risk, he continued. While the diplomatic corps pursues peaceful relations, we must prepare for less favorable outcomes. The humans have demonstrated military capabilities far beyond what should be possible for their technological level. He activated a holographic display showing battle data from the Earth invasion attempt. The assembled officials watched as human defenses systematically neutralized hegemony forces. Analysis confirms they adapted and improved upon captured hegemony technology with unprecedented speed, Admiral Zyx'Thrax stated. Their rate of technological assimilation is unlike anything we have previously encountered. All the more reason to act decisively, General Draz insisted, before they become an even greater threat. The Supreme Council has authorized Operation Contingency as a prudent precaution, Admiral Zyx'Thrax confirmed. The 7th and 9th fleets have been mobilized at Station Erebus. Should diplomacy fail, they can reach Earth within 2 standard days using the restricted transit network. And what of the human delegation currently on Quarthos Prime? Asked Fleet Commander Zor. They are being closely monitored, Admiral Zyx'Thrax assured him. Especially their technical specialist, Lieutenant Miller. He played a key role in the defeat of our invasion force and is likely gathering intelligence during this visit. Then why allow him access at all? Demanded General Draz. Because what he sees and reports back will shape human perception of the hegemony, Admiral Zyx'Thrax explained. We want them to perceive us as powerful but not hostile, unless they force our hand. As the meeting dispersed, none of the officials noticed the small maintenance drone in the corner of the chamber, a drone whose behavioral algorithms had been subtly altered by an intrusion so sophisticated that it had bypassed every security protocol in the hegemony's defense network. Chapter 9. Discovery. Devin Miller couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had set up his specialized equipment in his quarters, ostensibly to monitor environmental conditions. In reality, the devices included advanced signal interceptors and autonomous infiltration systems designed to gather intelligence throughout the hegemony complex. He'd expected to collect useful data on their technology and political structure. He had not expected to intercept direct feed from a high-level military meeting discussing plans for a potential second invasion of Earth. Operation Contingency, he murmured, watching the recording for the 3rd time. While the hegemony extended diplomatic courtesies with one hand, they were positioning a massive invasion fleet with the other. Devin encrypted the data and prepared a secure transmission to General Vasquez. This information was too sensitive to risk discussing openly. Their quarters were certainly under surveillance. At precisely 0800 the next morning, the human delegation gathered in their designated conference room. General Vasquez ensured the room was secured against surveillance before addressing them. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation. She began without preamble. Lieutenant Miller has intercepted information indicating that while the hegemony is pursuing diplomatic relations with us, they are simultaneously preparing a military contingency plan involving a substantially larger force than the one that attempted to invade Earth. She nodded to Devin, who activated the holographic display showing the intercepted recording. The hegemony has mobilized their 7th and 9th fleets at Station Erebus, he explained. These forces could reach Earth within 2 days using something called the restricted transit network. The delegation members watched with expressions ranging from shock to grim resignation. So this whole diplomatic mission is a sham? Asked one of the diplomats. Not necessarily, General Vasquez replied. Operation Contingency appears to be exactly what they call it. A contingency in case diplomacy fails, which is not unreasonable from their perspective. The question is, she continued, how do we respond? We can't confront them directly without revealing our intelligence capabilities. Yet we can't ignore the threat. Devin cleared his throat. There's another aspect to consider. Based on my analysis of their transit technology, I believe there may be vulnerabilities we could exploit. The system requires precise calibration and appears sensitive to certain types of quantum interference. Countermeasures? General Vasquez asked. Potentially, but developing them would require time and resources we might not have if Operation Contingency is activated. Then we need to ensure it isn't, the general decided. We continue the diplomatic mission as planned, but we also need to demonstrate our awareness of their capabilities without directly confronting them. Chapter 10. A Delicate Balance. The following day, Devin was escorted to the Hegemony Science Directorate by Director Jinva. The crystalline being greeted him with formal courtesy in the grand atrium of a massive research complex. Lieutenant Miller, welcome to the Science Directorate. We have prepared a tour that will satisfy your curiosity about our technological achievements while respecting established protocols. The tour began with demonstrations of impressive but deliberately non-strategic technologies. Devon asked informed questions and waited patiently for an opportunity to steer the conversation toward more sensitive topics. That opportunity came when they passed a laboratory containing what appeared to be a miniaturized version of the transit field he had observed during their journey. "Is this related to your remarkable transit network technology?" he asked, allowing genuine scientific curiosity to show. "Indeed," Director Zinva replied. "This is a teaching model used to demonstrate basic principles to our junior researchers." "Fascinating. Are there other variants with different capabilities?" "I imagine military applications might require different specifications." Director Zinva hesitated almost imperceptibly. "Military transit systems prioritize security and operational parameters that would be unnecessary for civilian transport." Devon decided to press slightly further. "I've heard references to something called a restricted transit network. Is that a military application?" This time the hesitation was unmistakable. The Hegemony maintains several specialized transit networks for various purposes. Some are restricted for security reasons. I'm afraid I'm not authorized to discuss classified systems. "Of course, I understand completely," Devon replied smoothly. "Earth has similar security protocols." The moment of tension passed and the tour continued. But Devon had confirmed an important fact. The restricted transit network was real, classified, and almost certainly the system that would be used if Operation Contingency were activated. More importantly, his scanning equipment had gathered detailed data on the teaching model. While simplified compared to the actual technology, it might provide crucial insights into potential countermeasures. Near the end of the tour, Director Zinva led him to a final demonstration area. "We have recently begun studying the modifications your species made to our captured vessels. Your approach to optimizing our propulsion systems was unexpected and impressive." Devon maintained a neutral expression, though internally he was on high alert. This was no longer just a diplomatic tour. It was an intelligence assessment. "The speed of your adaptation is what most interests us," the director continued. "Most species require generations to assimilate hegemony technology. Humans achieved significant improvements in months. We've had to become adaptable," Devon explained. "Earth's history is filled with rapid technological change. Our scientists are accustomed to paradigm shifts occurring within a single generation." "Yes," Director Zinva said, their crystalline voice taking on a different tone. "Your curiosity is most evident. Even during this tour, your specialized equipment has been actively scanning our facilities, has it not?" Devon felt a momentary chill but maintained his composure. "Standard procedure for technical assessment visits. I'm sure your personnel do the same." "Of course, though most visiting delegations are somewhat less thorough in their scanning protocols." There was no direct accusation, but the message was clear. The Hegemony was aware of his intelligence-gathering activities. "Information exchange is a cornerstone of meaningful diplomatic relations," Devon said carefully. "We're eager to learn all we can about our new galactic neighbors." "As are we, Lieutenant. As are we." Chapter 11. Critical Decisions. That evening, Supreme Counselor Quarthos received an intelligence report about the human delegation's activities. His advisor, Zhen Lao, was clearly troubled by the implications. "The human technical specialist has been quite busy," she reported. "His scanning activities were extensive, and our monitoring systems detected sophisticated infiltration attempts against our information networks." "Successful attempts?" Quarthos asked. "Partially. The human systems employed methods we hadn't anticipated. They may have accessed information about Operation Contingency." The Supreme Counselor was silent for a moment. "And yet the humans have given no indication they're aware of our precautionary measures. Their diplomatic engagement continues as scheduled. They are either unaware or they've chosen not to confront us directly with this knowledge." "Interesting. They gather intelligence while continuing diplomatic engagement. A pragmatic approach." Zhen Lao considered this. "What do you recommend?" "Accelerate our timetable," she replied. "If conflict with humanity is inevitable, delay only works to their advantage. Their rate of technological adaptation is unprecedented." "You assume conflict is inevitable," Quarthos observed. "What if it isn't? What if genuine alliance is possible? With a species that infiltrates our networks while smiling at our diplomatic receptions?" "We are doing precisely the same," the Supreme Counselor pointed out. "Operation Contingency exists alongside our diplomatic initiatives. We speak of peace while preparing for war." Zhen Lao had no immediate response to this observation. "Continue monitoring the human delegation," Quarthos instructed. "But take no direct action unless they threaten truly critical systems." I want to see how they use the information they obtain. And Operation Contingency? Maintain readiness, but do not accelerate the timetable. Despite your concerns, which I share, I am not yet convinced that conflict with humanity is our only option. Chapter 12. The Proposal. General Vasquez was surprised when a hegemony attendant discreetly approached her during a cultural exchange reception, requesting her presence for a private meeting with Supreme Counselor Quarthos. Just you, General, the attendant specified. No aides or advisors. After informing her team, General Vasquez followed the attendant to what appeared to be a private garden. A surprisingly Earth-like space with alien vegetation and flowing water. Supreme Counselor Quarthos was waiting alone, his imposing form somehow less intimidating in this peaceful setting. General Vasquez, he greeted her. Thank you for agreeing to this unconventional meeting. Supreme Counselor, she replied with a formal bow. It's an honor. Please be seated. What we have to discuss is best addressed directly, without formal diplomatic filters. General Vasquez took the offered seat, maintaining composure despite her curiosity. I appreciate directness. Good. Then let us be direct. Your Lieutenant Miller has demonstrated awareness of our restricted transit network. Technology not included in our formal exchange protocols. It was a statement, not a question. General Vasquez considered her response carefully. The exchange of information takes many forms, Supreme Counselor. Some official, some less so. Indeed. Just as the hegemony gathers intelligence about Earth while engaging in diplomatic relations, so too does Earth gather intelligence about the hegemony, particularly when one side maintains a massive invasion fleet positioned to reach Earth in less than 2 days. She had decided to be completely direct, laying Operation Contingency on the table between them. Quarthos's exoskeleton shifted slightly. Your intelligence capabilities are impressive, General. Yes, Operation Contingency exists. It is, as the name suggests, a contingency. A precautionary measure should diplomatic relations prove unproductive. A rather extreme contingency considering our delegation came here in peace. After defeating a hegemony invasion force, an unprecedented event. Surely you can understand our caution, just as you can understand ours, given that your first contact with humanity was an attempted invasion. There was a moment of tense silence. Then, surprisingly, the Supreme Counselor made a sound the translator identified as laughter. It seems we find ourselves in a situation of mutual suspicion, General. You know of Operation Contingency and are likely developing countermeasures. We are aware of your intelligence-gathering activities. Meanwhile, our diplomatic representatives exchange pleasant formalities. An accurate summary, General Vasquez acknowledged with a small smile. Though I would add that our diplomatic efforts are genuine, despite our awareness of your contingency plans. As are ours. Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting. I believe we stand at a crossroads. One path leads to escalating suspicion and eventual conflict. The other requires something rare in interstellar diplomacy, genuine trust. Trust is earned, Supreme Counselor. It's difficult to trust a civilization that maintains an invasion fleet aimed at your homeworld, just as it's difficult to trust a species that defeated your military forces and is rapidly adapting your technology. Yet here we are, having this conversation instead of preparing for war. General Vasquez had to admit he had a point. Both sides had legitimate reasons for caution, yet both were still pursuing diplomatic engagement. What are you proposing? A true alliance, Quarthos said simply. Not the standard arrangement where new species are gradually integrated into the hegemony hierarchy, but a direct partnership between equals. Mutual defense commitments, comprehensive technology exchange. General Vasquez couldn't hide her surprise. Equal standing. Earth is a single world, while the hegemony spans thousands. A single world that defeated a hegemony invasion force and has demonstrated remarkable adaptive capabilities. More importantly, a world whose approach to technology and problem-solving differs fundamentally from our own, offering potential complementary strengths. And Operation Contingency would be immediately disbanded. The 7th and 9th fleets would return to their regular deployment patterns. Why offer this now? Your Lieutenant Miller's demonstration of knowledge regarding our restricted transit network was illuminating. It confirmed what some of us suspected. Humanity's rate of adaptation exceeds anything we have previously encountered. Some of my advisors see this as a threat. I see it as an opportunity. It was a compelling vision, but General Vasquez remained cautious. A proposal of this significance would require extensive consultation with my government. I don't have the authority to accept or reject it unilaterally. Of course, but before you communicate this proposal, there is something you should understand. There are factions within the hegemony who view humanity as a threat to be eliminated rather than a potential ally. If your response is delayed too long, or if there are signs that Earth is preparing aggressive countermeasures, those advocating for military action will gain influence. I understand, General Vasquez said. I will communicate your proposal to Earth immediately, with my strong recommendation that it be given serious consideration. Thank you, General. I believe our civilizations stand at a historic juncture. The path we choose now will shape our relationship for centuries to come. Chapter 13. Earth's Response. 3 days later, the human delegation received Earth's preliminary response to the Supreme Councilor's alliance proposal. The encrypted transmission contained instructions that surprised even General Vasquez. Earth is genuinely interested in the alliance proposal, she informed her team after reviewing the message. But they want more information before committing to formal negotiations. They want a clearer understanding of the hegemony's internal politics and more details about the technology exchange. Reasonable requests, Ambassador Richland commented. There's more, General Vasquez continued. They've authorized me to inform the Supreme Councilor that Earth is aware of Operation Contingency and to request its immediate suspension as a show of good faith. Devon's eyes widened. That's a bold move. It directly acknowledges our intelligence capabilities, which the hegemony already suspects, Dr. Kumar pointed out. The Supreme Councilor himself acknowledged our awareness. True, but formally acknowledging it changes the diplomatic dynamic. It moves us from plausible deniability to open cards on the table, which is precisely what Earth wants, General Vasquez explained. They believe genuine alliance requires genuine transparency. The meeting with Supreme Councilor Quarthos was scheduled for the following day. In the meantime, Devon intensified his monitoring of hegemony communications, particularly those related to the military factions opposing alliance with humanity. What he found was concerning. There had been a significant increase in encrypted communications between military leaders, and Admiral Zyx'Thrax had scheduled an emergency meeting of the High Command, coinciding with General Vasquez's meeting with the Supreme Councilor. The military faction is preparing to formally oppose any suspension of Operation Contingency, Devon reported. They're arguing that our awareness of the operation proves the need for it rather than undermining it. Classic circular reasoning, Dr. Kumar noted. They attempted to invade us. We defended ourselves and gathered intelligence, and they cite that as justification for attacking us again. Then our meeting tomorrow may be more pivotal than we anticipated, General Vasquez concluded. We'll be presenting Earth's response at the same time the military faction is formally opposing it. Chapter 14. The Compromise. The following day brought a formal meeting between the human delegation and Supreme Councilor Quarthos. This time, Admiral Zyx'Thrax was present, suggesting the gravity of the discussion. Earth is genuinely interested in exploring alliance possibilities, General Vasquez began. We believe such a partnership could benefit both civilizations. Excellent, Quarthos said, though his tone seemed somewhat reserved. However, before proceeding to formal negotiations, Earth seeks clarification on several points. We would like a clearer understanding of the hegemony's internal politics regarding humanity. As Supreme Councilor, I speak for the hegemony in proposing this alliance, Quarthos replied. With respect, we are aware that there are factions within the hegemony who view humanity as a threat rather than a potential ally. You acknowledged this division in our previous conversation. Yes, there are those who counsel caution regarding humanity. This is natural given the unprecedented nature of our encounter. Which brings us to a specific concern, General Vasquez continued. Earth is aware of Operation Contingency, the positioning of your 7th and 9th fleets at Station Erebus, prepared for potential deployment against Earth. There was a moment of tense silence. Admiral Zyx'Thrax shifted his posture slightly. You are well informed, General, the Supreme Councilor acknowledged. Yes. Operation Contingency exists as a precautionary measure. As a demonstration of good faith while alliance discussions proceed, we request the immediate suspension of Operation Contingency and the return of the fleets to their regular deployment patterns. Another silence, longer this time. The Supreme Councilor and Admiral Zyx'Thrax exchanged a glance. That is a significant request, Quarthos said carefully. The Hegemony High Command would need to be consulted. We understand. However, Earth's leadership believes that genuine alliance requires genuine transparency. If the hegemony is serious about equal partnership, mutual trust must begin somewhere. A fair proposal, the Supreme Councilor acknowledged. I will present your request to the High Command today. I cannot guarantee they will approve immediate suspension, but I will advocate for it. There is one additional matter, Quarthos continued. The hegemony has detected sophisticated infiltration attempts against our information networks. While some intelligence gathering is expected, the extent has caused concern. In the spirit of transparency, General Vasquez replied carefully, Earth acknowledges that we have sought to better understand the hegemony's capabilities and intentions. This is natural given that our first contact was an invasion attempt. If we are to proceed toward alliance, such activities should be replaced by formal information exchange protocols, the Supreme Counselor suggested. Agreed. If Operation Contingency is suspended, Earth will cease all unauthorized intelligence-gathering activities. It was a diplomatic quid pro quo. The Supreme Counselor seemed satisfied with this arrangement. Chapter 15. The Decision. The following day, the human delegation received the hegemony's formal response. They gathered in their secure conference room as Ambassador Richland read the communication aloud. The Galactic Hegemony acknowledges Earth's interest in the proposed alliance. As a demonstration of good faith, the Hegemony High Command has authorized a partial suspension of Operation Contingency, with the Ninth Fleet returning to its regular deployment pattern effective immediately. There was a pause as the delegation members exchanged glances. Partial suspension, Ambassador Richland repeated. The Seventh Fleet will remain at Station Erebus as a reduced contingency force while alliance discussions proceed. A compromise position, General Vasquez observed. The Supreme Counselor couldn't get full suspension approved, but he secured partial withdrawal. Devon, who had been monitoring communications throughout the High Command meeting, offered his perspective. Based on the communications I intercepted, this represents a significant political victory for the Supreme Counselor. The military faction strongly opposed any suspension. Even this partial measure passed by a narrow margin. So he's demonstrating both good faith and political commitment to the alliance concept, Ambassador Richland summarized. But he's constrained by internal political realities. The question now is how Earth should respond, General Vasquez said. Demand full suspension, or accept this as sufficient demonstration of good faith? If we demand full suspension, we risk strengthening the military faction's position, Ambassador Richland pointed out. They could argue that humanity is being unreasonable. Whereas accepting the partial suspension acknowledges the Supreme Counselor's efforts and keeps the diplomatic path open, Dr. Kumar added. General Vasquez nodded slowly. I believe Earth should accept this as a positive first step while continuing to press for full suspension as alliance discussions proceed. It demonstrates our reasonableness while maintaining our position. Agreed, Ambassador Richland said. I'll draft a response along those lines. As the diplomatic exchange continued over the following days, a curious shift began to occur. The initial formality gradually gave way to more genuine interaction, particularly as Earth accepted the partial suspension as a good faith gesture. Technical exchange sessions became more substantive, with hegemony scientists sharing detailed information about their technologies. Cultural exchanges deepened, with both sides demonstrating increasing interest in understanding each other's perspectives. Devon found himself working closely with hegemony technical specialists. To his surprise, once the political decision had been made to pursue alliance, many of the scientists became remarkably forthcoming about their work. Your approach to quantum field manipulation is fascinating, one Thicon scientist commented during a joint session. You humans seem to intuitively grasp connections that our more structured methodologies sometimes miss. Different perspectives lead to different insights, Devon replied. That's why exchange is so valuable. We each see possibilities the other might overlook. Perhaps this is what Supreme Counselor Quarthos meant by complementary strengths, the scientist mused. Your species' rapid adaptation paired with our systematic development and long-term stability. I think that's exactly what he meant, Devon agreed. Together, we might achieve breakthroughs that neither civilization could reach alone. Epilogue: New Horizons. 1 year later, Captain Devon Miller stood on the observation deck of the Unity 2, Earth's first true interstellar vessel. Built using a combination of human engineering and hegemony technology, it represented the most visible outcome of the historic alliance between humanity and the Galactic Hegemony. Quite a view, isn't it? Came a familiar voice behind him. Devon turned to see General Vasquez, recently promoted to oversee Earth's new interstellar defense force, approaching. Never gets old, he agreed, gesturing toward the vast starfield. The Unity 2 was currently in transit to Quarthos Prime, carrying the first group of human scientists and diplomats who would take up permanent positions in the hegemony capital. Hard to believe it's been only a year since the invasion, the general remarked. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. And sometimes it feels like yesterday, Devon replied. Though I have to admit, I prefer diplomatic missions to fighting off alien invasions. General Vasquez smiled. As do we all. The alliance hasn't been without challenges, but it's proceeding better than many expected. That was an understatement. The initial alliance negotiations had been tense, with factions on both sides suspicious of the other's intentions. But over months of detailed discussions, a framework had emerged that respected both human independence and hegemony protocols, while establishing mechanisms for mutual defense, technology exchange, and cultural interaction. Operation Contingency had been fully disbanded 6 months into the negotiations, with both fleets returning to their regular deployment patterns. In exchange, Earth had opened its defense systems to hegemony inspection, demonstrating transparency that helped build trust. "Have you heard about the Joint Research Initiative?" General Vasquez asked. Devon nodded. "The Quantum Transit Project? They've achieved a 30% efficiency improvement in transit field generation. The hegemony scientists are calling it a breakthrough that would have taken them centuries to achieve on their own." "Complementary strengths," General Vasquez observed. "The Supreme Counselor was right about that." "He was right about many things," Devon agreed, though I doubt even he anticipated how quickly the alliance would bear fruit. The pace of technological development on Earth had accelerated dramatically with access to hegemony science, while the hegemony benefited from humanity's innovative approaches to long-standing challenges. Cultural exchange programs were flourishing, with humans studying at hegemony institutions while alien representatives explored Earth's diverse societies. "Your new assignment begins when we reach Quarthos Prime, correct?" General Vasquez asked. Devon nodded. "Joint Intelligence Liaison Office. I'll be helping coordinate information sharing between Earth and hegemony security services, making sure we understand each other's concerns and capabilities. From unauthorized infiltration to official information exchange," the general observed with a smile. "A fitting evolution. Life is full of ironies," Devon agreed. "Though I have to admit, working with the hegemony's intelligence specialists is less stressful than hacking their systems while trying not to get caught." As they continued their conversation, the transit alert chimed, indicating they were approaching the next jump point. Soon they would make the transition through the hegemony's transit network, the same technology Devon had once analyzed for vulnerabilities, now carrying him peacefully to what had once been enemy territory. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "none of this would have happened if the hegemony hadn't tried to invade Earth in the first place. If Admiral Zyx'Thrax hadn't dismissed humans as a myth." "Another irony," General Vasquez agreed. "Their greatest mistake led to what may become their most valuable alliance. And our first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization came in the form of an invasion attempt," Devon added. "Yet here we are, on the verge of becoming a recognized interstellar power." The transit field began to form ahead of the Unity 2, a swirling tunnel of energy that would carry them across thousands of light-years in moments. It was beautiful, a physical manifestation of how far humanity had come. "Humans are just a myth," Devon quoted softly, recalling Admiral Zyx'Thrax's infamous declaration, said the alien admiral before his life changed forever. General Vasquez smiled. "I think all our lives changed forever that day. The question is, where do we go from here?" As the Unity 2 entered the transit field, carrying humanity's representatives deeper into a galaxy that was only beginning to understand the species it had once dismissed as mythological, Devon Miller had no definitive answer to that question, but he was looking forward to finding out. The myth had become reality, and reality had proven far more complex and promising than either side had imagined. From invasion to alliance, from enemies to partners, the journey had been unexpected, challenging, and ultimately transformative for both civilizations. And it had all begun with 6 simple words. "Humans are just a myth," said the alien admiral before the invasion began. How wrong he had been, and how fortunate for all concerned that his error had led not to conquest, but to partnership. A new chapter in galactic history written together by species who had learned that sometimes the most powerful myths are the ones that turn out to be true. The end.